A couple of months ago, I did a review for Bethan Roberts' book, My Policeman, and Harry Styles fans turned up and they did a lot of commenting and liking of that video, which I very much appreciate. And a lot of them were talking about how they wanted to know more about the book and more about the plot. And I thought I would make that video for you and also discuss how I think that this book is going to be translated into a movie. I will link that video below in the description box, just in case you want to avoid spoilers, because this video is going to be filled with spoilers. I will give you another warning right before the main spoiler, just in case you want to avoid it because you want to read the book or you want to watch the movie without knowing what's going to happen. I will definitely make sure I give you another warning, but this is going to have spoilers in it. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'm a little bit up in the air about how a book is going to translate to a film. But this is one of those occasions where I actually think that the book is going to translate really well and the movie is probably going to be better than the book. In my review of My Policeman, I talked about how I nearly gave up in the first third because it was so slow moving. And I think that that is going to still, that part of that story is still going to be there in the movie, but I think it's going to be condensed, which is going to make it really work very, very well as part of the story. So let's get to what actually happens in the book. The book opens with Marion, who is going to be played by Emma Corrin in her younger version, but she is writing a long letter, a long nostalgic letter to a man called Patrick, who is very, very unwell and is under her care, and he is basically living with her, and she's sort of going back down memory lane in quite a large amount of detail, talking about her transition into teaching and some of her actual lessons and what it was like to meet Tom. The reason this part of the book didn't really work for me was because it's written as a letter, so it's like this letter that just goes on forever as one elongated monologue, and a lot of the details Patrick already knows. So when she starts talking about how she met Tom, she obviously describes him, which is for the reader's benefit, and talks about his character and things like that in a large amount of detail. I feel like if you're actually writing a letter to Patrick, he already knows. It does serve to set her up as the narrator, which they will likely use in the movie too, but the way it will be done in the movie will be much less of a, my God, how long is this letter you're writing, Patrick, kind of vibe. It'll be kind of more like The Notebook, where they start off with the elderly couple and someone is narrating that story, and then it just disappears back into the flashback memories, and you're actually in the 1950s with Emma Corrin as Marion and Harry Styles as Tom. Marion is a young teacher and she strikes up a friendship with Tom, who is a junior police officer. Tom always seemed a little bit more standoffish to me in this book, but Marion is definitely keen on Tom. They have a few social adventures and kind of dates, and he does teach her to swim, and I think he does it daily, but I can't remember because it's been a little while since I read the book. But they definitely strike up a very definite friendship, but it does feel one-sided. It doesn't feel like he's as keen on her as she is on him. But this is why we have seen images of poor Harry as a little frosticle swimming and them filming him on the beach, because that's a really important part of the story. It's how Marion and Tom build their bond, and it's also kind of how she actually establishes a relationship with him because she wants him to teach her to swim. Then in the book, all of a sudden they're embracing and nearly having sex, which is quite significant for back in the 50s, and it did kind of come out of nowhere. I didn't really understand where Tom's sudden burning lust had come from. And then they're married, and again I was confused because I never really thought Tom was that keen. From the paparazzi images we've seen, it does look like they've already filmed some date sequences with Emma and Harry, and it looks like they're having a great time, and it's hard to know if that's part of the filming, that they're having a great time, or if they actually stop rolling and they're having a great time off camera. But I think what they're going to do with the movie is actually make the kind of romance between Tom and Marion a little bit more significant, because I mean, you've got Harry and Emma and you're going to use them, and Harry is very, very charismatic, and I just think if they kind of keep Tom as that drawn back, it's not going to be as an enjoyable movie, because you're kind of going to feel a little bit like I felt reading the book, which is kind of like, Marion, can't you see what's happening here? I do hope they create more chemistry between Harry and Emma's characters of Marion and Tom. I don't think that'll be hard with Harry there though. The marriage is for sure rocky, and they have some awkward, intimate encounters, and Tom's friend Patrick is ever present. Patrick is actually a lovely character. He's very artistic, and from memory he works in an art house, and he includes Marion completely and is very lovely to her, and he guides her around through the art world and through his social encounters with Tom as if she very much should be there, because she's his partner, she's his spouse, and there's nothing awkward about the way Patrick interacts. There is a very stark difference between the friendship of Patrick and Tom and the friendship in the early stages of the relationship between Tom and Marion, to the point where you kind of wonder why Marion didn't cotton on, because he is so much more animated around Patrick and so much more engaged, and like clearly they have a very significant connection. If you're wanting to avoid major spoilers, I am going to include a timestamp below, but you might be wanting to look at skipping ahead right about now. Finally, Marion starts to get a little bit suspicious because her love life is not what she'd hoped it would be. Tom is not really the affectionate husband she was hoping for, especially given that her feelings were so significant. She's also starting to get a little frustrated because Patrick is around so much and he and Tom are so very close. In her frustration, Marion starts to talk to people, and I think from memory it's Tom's sister she talks to, but either way it's a significant family sibling or friend, and she's sort of discussing how Patrick's always present, but her marriage is not as passionate and as love-filled as she had hoped, and she doesn't really know what to do, and she's a little bit anxious. And the friend goes, well, yeah, I mean, we were all kind of a little surprised when you got married because Tom is different. And still, the penny doesn't drop. It does take a while for that penny to drop, and progressively Marion's jealousy increases. And because this is the 1950s, it's not really possible for Tom and Patrick to be out and proud. Members of the LGBTQ+ community back in the 50s risked a lot to be with each other, especially out in public. And so ultimately Marion is kinda Tom's beard. Again, this is your last warning to skip ahead if you're wanting to avoid the major spoiler. When finally Marion realizes what's going on between Tom and Patrick and her jealousy escalates, she throws them under a bus. So I can't remember who she reports them to, but she does report them to someone, and Patrick gets carted away by the police and Tom loses his job. As far as I can remember, Tom actually ends up working in security and continues working in security for the rest of his loveless marriage, which is filled with a lot of anger. Although Tom doesn't know that it was Marion who threw them under the bus. He just knows that they got sprung. Then we come back to that really, really long reminiscing letter that Marion is writing for Patrick. She admits what she's done and that she was the one that threw them both under the bus, causing them to lose each other and their livelihoods. She expresses remorse, and it kind of becomes clear that that's the reason why she is caring for Patrick in his final stages of life. Tom at this point is very, very angry and resentful of being stuck in his marriage with Marion and of Patrick basically being an invalid. He has spent years going out and having affairs, but never really patched things up with Patrick and never really kind of re-established a relationship with him after all of all that. So what Marion does is she essentially leaves that letter on the kitchen bench for both of them to find out the truth after she has kind of softened things between Tom so that he'll go in and talk to Patrick, seeing he is at the end of his life. She finally walks out and she leaves, and we, the reader, know that Tom will take care of Patrick now until he dies. So that's what happens in My Policeman. I never really warmed to any of the characters except for Patrick, and if he hadn't have been as lovable as he is, I for sure would have stopped reading. The first third of this book is extremely slow, but the last third is actually quite interesting. Tom is definitely gaslighting Marion, so he is a bit of a frustrating character. And Marion, well, she's just blind. So let's talk about what I think is going to happen in the movie. I think that ultimately the movie is going to follow the same path. We're going to open up with Marion addressing Patrick and kind of reminiscing, and then we're going to go into the past and see those relationships and how they came together, how they fell apart, and what happened. And then we are going to wrap up with Tom and Patrick finally kind of making things right, Marion making things right, and Marion getting out of there and walking away from that marriage. I also think they're going to thicken up the love story. I think they're going to have Tom be a bit more conflicted. I think they're going to make him want Marion a little bit more because, as I said, in the book he's kind of not really all that interested, but I definitely think that they're going to keep the Patrick-Tom intensity there, and I think if they lose that, that's going to be a real tragedy. I think ultimately they're going to make it more of a relationship between Tom and Marion than is in the book, because they've got two such great actors playing those roles, and because, as I said before, Harry is particularly charismatic, so I think it would actually probably be quite hard for him to put himself in a little box and turn the charisma and the charm off. We already know that they want Harry to do a realistic love scene. They have said that. We just don't know whether it's going to be between Marion and Tom or Tom and Patrick. And I hope it's between Tom and Patrick, but I think you're probably going to get one of each. I think you're going to get a short, awkward shag on the bed, which is what happens in the book, between Marion and Tom, just to sort of counterbalance against the more passionate relationship he has with Patrick. In the scenes we've seen Harry and Emma filming together, they do look a lot happier together, so my hope is that there's a little bit more build up in this relationship, so when they do actually get married, it's not kind of like, oh, yeah, okay. As I said, I think they're going to be angling for a bit more conflict, so they're going to be building those relationships between Tom and Marion a little bit more, and I think they'll be getting Harry and Emma to flex their emotional muscle and to give us a big fight scene and some really significant emotional scenes. And I think they're both going to be really up to the challenge. I saw Harry in Dunkirk, which admittedly is a small role, but he was fantastic, and we've all seen the video clip for Falling, which is just artistically beautiful, but also he looks like someone has ripped his heart out. So I think he's going to be more than capable of playing this role, and I think he's actually going to do a really great job. We know that Emma captured a lot of the early innocence of Diana really well for the Netflix special of The Crown, and I think she's going to need to bring some of that to make Marion believable, especially because it does take so long for the penny to drop for Marion. I think they're going to make Tom a lot more likable. They have to, because why else would you pay the money that it probably cost them to get Harry to do this movie and know that mostly his fans are going to be the ones lining up to see this movie, and then make him an unlikable character, kind of like he is in the book, where he is extremely standoffish. I do hope that they really lean into his relationship with Patrick, though. I think that would be a real waste of a great storyline if they don't. One of the reasons I actually finished this book, even though I struggled so much with really the first half of it, is because I knew they were going to make it into a movie. And I am glad that I finished this book, because the later part of this book, so maybe like the last third, was really good, and it did sort of justify the first part, which was more dull. It did set it up well, but it's a very slow burn of a book. I'm sure Harry's fans don't actually need encouragement to go and see the movie, but I really do think this is going to be a very interesting movie to see, and I think this is going to be one of those books that makes a great film adaptation. Do I think that you're going to need to have read this book to enjoy the movie? Absolutely not. I think that the movie has every chance of actually being better than the book. If you've made it this far into the video, chances are you're a Harry Styles fan. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that you'll like it and subscribe to my channel. If you are a YA reader, I would strongly encourage you, and I would love it if you checked out my books. The Hunted is the first book of the Phoenix series, and Night Rises is the second book. The third book will be released soon, so if you enjoy stories like Harry Potter and the Shadowhunter series and Twilight and books like that, then definitely check out my books for the Phoenix series. The Phoenix series is available everywhere where books are sold in ebook and paperback format. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like and to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all again very soon. There are just 2 pelicans that are just swimming around behind the camera. It's quite beautiful. Thanks.